right. Hi, Madison. It's nice to see you again.
Hi, good to see you.
Have you been since I last talked to you? I know it's been a few weeks.
I've been doing pretty good. I think a little bit better than the last time we talked. I've tried to relax a little bit more,
Okay.
but still just stressed about this.
Yeah, still quite a few unknowns without having the results of this. How is work going?
So they I'm still like wasn't allowed to come back fully
Okay.
until I got this cleared. My boss like kind of did me a solid and like let me come back a couple days a week as long
Okay.
as I wasn't operating any heavy machinery. So
Okay.
I was just working with like picking orders and things like that,
Okay.
which I don't love, but it was great to be able to like have some income.
Yeah.
So just did that and yeah, just waiting for the results of this to kind of figure out where to go next.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing that with me. So, given sort of your experience now that we're a couple of weeks out from both the intake and you taking the assessments, what sort of reactions do you have to the experience and questions so far?
Um, I think I don't really, like I said before, don't think I like have a problem, but I did think it was interesting when you said to me like that drinking is like a part-time job
Mm,
and like because I wasn't considering the like hangover time really.
mm,
And yeah, so I think that's I don't know. I think it's given me like a little more like motivation to try to like I think reduce some of that just so
okay.
that it's not like impacting my work because it does get really tiring and it feels worth it to me because I get to hang out with my friends. But yeah, I've definitely been just like thinking more about that a little bit.
So it
Yeah.
sounds like you've had a little bit of insight given both our conversation and some of the assessments that you took.
Yeah, I think it was good to like write it all out. I definitely, like I said, like don't really think there's a significant concern, but I can
Hmm.
see how like, maybe it's just like, I don't know, better for me like feeling better the next day.
Yeah, so like there could be something there, though. Of course, you still wish that there wasn't.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, given our conversation and given your um, output, like what you answered on the assessments that I sent to you, I was able to compile a full report for you, and I do have that report here. I'm going to send you a copy of that report after our meeting today. And this is the report that you'll take to your employer. You'll show it to them, but it's also your document. It's a medical record for you. So with that in mind, I always like to tell people that this is still a living document. So if there are things in here that don't make sense or wording is confusing for you, let me know and we can change that, we can alter it, we can discuss what that change might look like. There are some pieces that we will want to keep in here, but maybe the way that it's presented can change. So all that I ask is that you let me know what questions you have or if there are areas of this document that don't make sense so that we can make this document what it needs to be for you because it is your record.
Okay.
So I have that report with me today and we're going to talk through it. And then after we sort of talk through it, I'll give you that report and we'll figure out if there are any changes that we want to make throughout. Does that sound like an okay plan?
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
good.
perfect. So based on sort of our conversation, the layout of our assessment report is that it's going to have a lot of your demographic information, and then there's going to be a top portion that says why you came in, and that's going to say that you were required to come in for your job. And then right after that, it's going to go into the diagnoses. And based on our previous conversations, there were two diagnoses that I was able to render for you or that felt like they fit for you. The first of those was post-traumatic stress disorder, and that is in relation to the car accident that you experienced 7 years ago and some of the effects that you've been experiencing more recently after the effect. And the second diagnosis that was rendered was an alcohol use disorder diagnosis, and that was labeled as moderate based on the symptoms that you experienced. So I know I just sort of kind of put that information out there, so I want to take a minute and check in and see what reactions you have to hearing that there are two diagnoses for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's surprising,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a little disappointing because, yeah, like I said, I really don't think I like have a problem. I mean, I do like I can see how it's caused some like challenges in my life, the alcohol use,
Hmm.
as we were like talking about it and hearing about it, but I don't feel like those are things that are like considerably worse than a lot of people. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's just kind of surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime we're hearing a diagnosis for ourselves, it can be a little bit shocking at times. So I appreciate you letting me know that that's where you're struggling, that that's sort of your reaction to this experience. So given our conversations, the reason why we came down to that diagnosis, and I'm going to talk about the alcohol use disorder one specifically. There were a few areas of your life and your current experience that sort of indicated that alcohol use may be a problem for you or may have a significant impact on your life. And a couple of those areas that came out, and this is all in the report as well, I break that down specifically, is that there have been times in your life where you've spent a considerable amount of time either drinking or recovering from the effects of your drinking. That's where I came down to that part-time job sort of description for you. There were also instances where you would go out and you would drink more than you had anticipated, where you would set out to drink way fewer drinks than you ended up having significantly more. You also discussed some instances where you were having issues with being able to sort of fulfill your major roles in life. So calling into work, calling in sick, showing up to work under the influence. There was also some experiences specifically around the DUI, but also driving at work under the influence where you were operating heavy machinery or putting yourself in physically hazardous situations while under the influence of alcohol. And there was also the experience of this causing problems in your life. So causing conflicts with your friends to the point where you weren't able to talk with your friend Macy for almost 2 weeks, you said. All of those sort of indicate to me that alcohol may be a bigger problem in your life than maybe we would hope or that you would have hoped. And it sounds like those are all areas of your life that you're endorsing as having problems. It just might not necessarily feel like they're as problematic as they are. As you said, it feels like it's pretty consistent with other people in your life.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it, that all the people around me drink really similarly
Yeah.
and for the most part, and everybody has like pretty similar experiences. And I feel like just people at my age, it's kind of typical.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it definitely like, the stress that I've experienced because of the DUI has been no joke. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that it would maybe be bigger than I had thought.
Yeah. And I don't want to discount as well that there's a pretty big motivation for this to not be an issue. And a lot of times when there is this big motivating factor, like, hey, like my job is on the line, like my livelihood is on the line, sometimes we really want it to not be as big of an issue as it is. And sometimes we may even start to try to hide some of those aspects of our substances just so that it doesn't have as big of an impact on our lives.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of weight that carries with this. I mean, that's just talking about your job. That's not even talking about what this does for your license or your insurance or even just like getting to and from work, your daily life. There's a lot of weight carried with this having an impact on your life.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that we, of course, wouldn't want it to be this way. And there are these areas of your life that seem to be affected by your alcohol use.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still, like I said, like, I don't think I really have a problem and that
Yeah.
I feel pretty confident. I don't know that like I'm not going to get another DUI and
Yeah.
I'm like really committed to like making sure that doesn't like using drinking alcohol doesn't like have an impact on my work. Um, so I don't know. It's tricky.
Yeah, tricky is a good way to describe this when there are so many pieces involved. And it sounds like, as you're saying, that this diagnosis and the DUI more specifically have been a little bit of a change for you around, oh, well, maybe I do want to make these changes, as you're saying, cut down, make sure I'm not showing up to work under the influence.
Yeah, I think there's just yeah, and I want my work to trust me and to believe that I'm not gonna like do these things because I do want to be able to work up there and eventually be in a position with like some more power. And yeah, I don't know. I just really worry that if the results in this report come across that like I have a problem, that's going to be a really low likelihood.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, and I also want to circle back to the fact that you've mentioned that it feels like your drinking is comparable to your friends.
Yeah.
It's what they do, and that may be the case in some circumstances, and there may be some pieces that you're not seeing about their alcohol use that you're experiencing and they're not. I'm curious, and you might not know, but how many of your friends have had a DUI for their drinking?
I don't think any of them have had a DUI, but multiple drive like under the influence.
Yeah. So there are pieces that may be a little bit similar in terms of like you're all drinking under the influence, and pieces may be different around. You have this piece, like you have this legal report that says you were driving under the influence, which plays a factor
Yeah.
in your experience of alcohol use. That may or may not be different from your friends.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess a little bit.
Yeah. So you mentioned not wanting the report to look like you're having a problem. And I think that's a really great question to ask because this report does go to your employer. And the way that I like to describe this to people is that this report is all about reporting the news. So this is just saying what we found, similar to what I was just saying with you around like here were the things that you said you experienced. It's laid out like that in the report as well. Like Madison reported this or reported this, and based on that, we determined this. How that is then interpreted is up to you and your employer. I like to also remind people that you are more than just this piece of paper, more than this report. You are a whole human. And that's also going to come through in here. I'm going to put in all of your background information, that long conversation we had during the intake where I'm asking you about your history. That information is going to be in there as well to help give a more comprehensive picture of who you are. And know that this document is only one part of your experience at work. This is just the report that says, here's what we found. What your employer chooses to do with that information is up to them, and you will be there in that conversation. They will be talking with you, and you can describe your experience with this as well.
Okay.
Yeah. What are some of your reactions so far? I know we've talked about the alcohol use disorder, so I just want to check in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just worry about what their reaction's gonna be. And I have a good relationship with like our HR person and my manager, and so I hope that like some of those things will speak to my character as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't want this to like ruin my prospects at this place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know off the top of my head because I don't work for Amazon, so I don't know for sure what the impact of this report will be. And it sounds like you have some support. In addition to that support, my name is also on this report, and I'm happy to be someone who can communicate about this report for you. So if your employer has questions, they can always contact me. My contact information is in the report. They can ask me questions, and I'm more than happy to talk with them if that's helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Of course. There was also the post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis, and I want to check in and see what reactions you have to that diagnosis.
I guess I'm surprised that it was a diagnosis,
Mm.
but it definitely like makes sense. Just since some of these things haven't gone away, and I thought like 7 years later it should be like completely gone, but with just some of those reminders coming up and it, I don't know, being just kind of popping back up, I think it really just surprised me that
Yeah.
it was like this strong, but like maybe simmering under the surface. So.
Yeah. So maybe weren't expecting it to pop up in this situation, and the fact that it did seems like it makes sense then that the diagnosis is there.
Yeah, I think so. Like I knew something was up, but I didn't know it would be like a full-blown like diagnosis, I guess.
Yeah, it was definitely something that you experienced that had an influence on your life. And it also appeared that the DUI was a really big sort of event that brought a lot of that back, given the similarities of being in the car and there being like law enforcement around and sort of the stress of that situation, of course, is a lot to process. And it's not uncommon for trauma to sort of be reignited at times in our lives, given some of our experiences and given the similarities. It sounds like that may have been the case for you, which is why that diagnosis is a little bit more prominent now
Yeah.
than it may have been in the past.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just really hope it goes away because I don't know. Things have reduced a lot in the last few weeks, but I don't want to keep thinking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely have some content in the report that's going to help with that. So before we get to that, I just wanted to also discuss, so similar to the substance use section where we're going into which items you endorse or which characteristics of alcohol use disorder were endorsed that helped us to determine that you needed this diagnosis or that this diagnosis fit for you right now. I did something similar with the post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis, going through the symptoms that you're experiencing now and how that supports that diagnosis at this time in your life. After that section where we go into a breakdown of the substance use assessment, the social emotional sort of assessments that you did, so the PTSD, anxiety, and depression diagnose or assessments. The next section of the report is talking about how this comes up in your life. So what areas of your life might be influenced by these diagnoses or that you have already said are influenced in your life. So your work, your friendships, your conflicts that are showing up in those areas, um, driving in the car, your impact on your sleep and your eating, those areas are all going to show up in the section that I call like our functional impact, which is where we're talking about how this is showing up in your life. And then to kind of come back to, I don't want this to, I hope that the effects of the PTSD are wearing off, or I don't want my employers to think that this is a problem. The next section of your report is when we go into sort of the recommendations of where to go from here. So really going into the options that you have available to you with these diagnoses. So with both alcohol use disorder and with post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the biggest recommendations that I have is to seek some individual therapy. That therapy can be targeted or sort of like narrowed down to specifically for alcohol use disorder and for trauma. And I listed in the report some different referrals in the community, different ones that will provide different types of therapy, but there are some that are more helpful for different diagnoses at different times. So for example, with a trauma diagnosis, excuse me, one of the things that we recommend is to have a specific trauma related therapy. One of them that is the most noteworthy is cognitive processing therapy. So being able to have a therapist who specializes in that. So I have some therapists who do specialize in that, similar to the alcohol use disorder, providing therapists who specialize in that treatment. And that way you can figure out where you want to go from there. We also have some oh my goodness, some recommendations in here for different things that you can do for yourself, different coping skills that you can utilize, as well as communities in groups in our community that you can get in touch with to have some support of other people who are navigating alcohol use disorder or other people who are processing trauma in group settings so that they can have that support from others. I have those listed in here as well as, again, some of those coping skills that you can do. So, for example, some of the things that I always include in my reports are how to take care of yourself, because a lot of times we forget the impact of our behaviors on our mental health. So if we're able to take care of ourselves, are we getting enough exercise? Are we eating well enough? And how that can influence our mental health. So I have some recommendations in here for that as well. So I want to check in and see any reactions or questions that you have so far to that content.
I don't think so. I think I'm glad that there's like a couple different options because it'll be nice to have, I don't know, like a group option to be around other people and see how common my experience is. Like, I'm curious to see if people are like, I don't know, more severe or less severe. Like, I just am curious. So I think that'll be good, and to have like a group, like, I don't know, support in it.
Yeah.
But what does treatment for like alcohol use look like in the therapy?
Yeah, it can vary from person to person. A lot of it is talking about what alcohol use looks like for you and the impact it has on your life, and then working with you in what you feel like is the most important for you moving forward to pursue the goals in life that you want. So if your goal is to reduce your alcohol or completely eliminate it, the therapist will work with you to target what that looks like. And maybe that's just reducing the effects of the alcohol in your life right now, and then the therapist is going to work with you on that. So it's all about meeting you where you're at and figuring out a plan together that will get you towards the goals that you have. That's a great question.
Okay, so somebody's not gonna like come in and tell me everything about how I should
No.
change my life. Okay,
No. And if they did, would that work for you?
no.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate your transparency with that. Yeah, it's going to be meeting you where you're at and figuring out what makes the most sense for you because you are the person living in your life. So you have to have a pretty big say in how this is going to change where you want to go from here.
Okay.
Yeah. So the rest of the report that I have after I go through those recommendations and referrals are a section where it has a breakdown of your scores, so exactly as they appeared in the output reports. And then after that, I go into your background information. So the information about who you are as a person in that long intake interview that we did that puts you in context of your life. So all of that content is in the report, and then it ends with me stating that it was a pleasure to work with you because it has been a pleasure to work with you. I appreciate your transparency and what you have shared with me, even if the results weren't necessarily what you were expecting. I do appreciate your willingness to be forthcoming with your experience. And then after that has my contact information should your employer need to reach out and ask some questions.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good to know. Seems like a very thorough report.
Yeah, they're definitely long. So, like I said before, I have that report and I'm going to print out one for you when we leave here. And then we can meet again to go over it again if you have any questions, or you can email me as well if we have questions and we can set up a time to make any changes if needed. But I also want to check in and see what your reaction is so far now that we've gone over the report.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely, if my work wants me to see a therapist, I'll see a therapist. I think for like the trauma stuff, it feels helpful to kind of get rid of that. The alcohol stuff, like I said, I don't really know if that's really like a major concern, as concerning as, I don't know. It seems like law enforcement is like making it seem, but if my work wants me to like go to a therapist, if that's what helps me keep my job and whatever, like I'll be willing to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think it just is confusing because I'm like, I don't know what I would do if I like all of my friends, like this is like how we hang out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it would be super weird if I just was like not drinking with them.
Yeah, and that's a part of your life that's been an important aspect of your social interactions with others is drinking. And at this point, we don't know what that effect is going to be. If you even will stop drinking, if you're going to continue and just reduce, like that's all unknown right now. And there's a lot of time between now and whatever the outcome is going to be. And things change with friend groups. Like you mentioned, if I'm remembering correctly, that with some of your friends, their alcohol use has changed as they've gotten older. They've had kids and partners, and their jobs are a little bit more demanding, and their alcohol use has decreased. So if yours decreases as well, we don't know what that reaction is going to be. If they were able to do that, maybe that is a possibility for you. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, maybe some of these things kind of ebb and flow, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really hope my work doesn't. I don't know. Do you think they're going to perceive like the PTSD diagnosis as something that's really negative?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know. Just because I'm not working at your facility, there are a lot of, excuse me, a lot of instances in a lot of people's lives where they've experienced something that is traumatic for them. And the way that that shows up in their life is so unique to that person that I would hope that your employer is going to take that into context and work with you to see if that even shows up in your work. Because it doesn't with everyone. And that's okay. Sometimes it does, and that's also okay. So a large part of that is communicating with your employer what you're comfortable sharing and working out a plan with them. And again, I don't work for Amazon, so I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I am happy to advocate for you and to talk about your report with your employer should they have any questions.
Okay. Yeah, that's super helpful.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions for me?
I don't think so. I mean, Like if I have concerns about the report and want things like worded a different way, you said you're willing to do some of that?
Yeah, we can definitely talk through that. There is some content that we're going to keep in the report, but the way that it's presented can change. So, for example, if you are like, oh, hey, I saw that you put this note in here about the car accident that happened. I wish people wouldn't know this aspect of it. If that part isn't necessary, we can remove it. If that part's necessary, we can talk through together what's the best way for that information to be presented so that it makes sense for you because, again, this is your medical document that you're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just like I worry about talking about the like driving the forklift, even like a
Mm,
little drunk or I don't know, hungover or whatever.
yeah,
So I worry that that's gonna, I don't know, be perceived really poorly by my work.
yeah, absolutely. When you get the report, definitely read over that section. Let me know your reactions to it, and then we can talk about if we want to change the way that it's worded for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, that would be super helpful if there was just like, I don't know, a way to
yeah,
make it a little different. Obviously not like lying, but making it a little different so maybe it's not such a big deal.
yeah. Definitely read over it when you've got the report in your hands, and we can talk through that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions for me?
I don't think so. Is there anything else you need from me?
Not at this point, besides just having you go over the report and letting me know if there are any changes or questions that you have once you have the report in your hands. Because again, if we need to meet to go over it again when you have the physical copy, I'm happy to do that because again, this is your report. So just communicating with me after you've gotten that report to see how you're feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then is this report like confidential as for like obviously it's going to go to my work because they require it, but
Mhm.
like this isn't something that gets added to like my medical record, right?
This is a confidential report in that you get to share it with whoever you feel necessary to share it with.
Okay.
So if it's important for you to share it with your doctor, go ahead and do that. And that can also be something that you talk about with your with a therapist if you see a therapist given those recommendations. They can talk with you about when and who you want to share that report with. But yeah, it is confidential in that regard. It's not like it's automatically added to every record you've ever had.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good to know. Just because I don't know. I think like my mom is still like an emergency contact on something, and so I don't want her to like
Mhm.
see this and freak out or
Yep.
whatever.
This is your information to share with who you choose to
Okay.
share. Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to know.
absolutely. Any other questions for me?
I don't know if there's like a whole lot else that I have a lot of questions for my job, obviously,
Yeah,
but
of course.
not really about like the report itself. But I'll definitely take like a very thorough read through it and let you
Absolutely.
know if there's sections that I feel like maybe we can work together on it being worded
Yeah.
differently or
Yeah.
something.
And see how it is after you've got it in hand so that way we can go over it together. Definitely reach out with those questions. I'm happy to answer them. I know I can't answer the ones for your work, but I'm happy to be a support if you need it. And I can't say it enough, but I really do appreciate working with you and your honesty throughout this process. So definitely reach out if you have questions.
Yeah, of course. I totally will.
Awesome. Thank you, Madison. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Patrice.